Well, it is time for our second episode of Half Formed Thoughts with Half Decent Studio. G'day, Murray.
G'day, Rosie. I
Look at
see
us.
you're outdoors, just
Yeah.
enjoying.
Location. It's like
Yeah,
having a studio.
I got very sick of being indoors and seeing videos of certainly me, if not both of us,
Yeah.
with a boring old background.
No, I have to say, the lighting setup is much more natural where you are now than usually. Awesome. Well, okay, so wanted to talk to you this week about this thing that we're both doing a bit more of, which is writing to an email list. So for a bit of context, Murray has just started the newsletter, and I'll probably drop the link in the description. And that's a new thing. I know you used to send stuff to a bunch of people on your and then that changed, and this is sort of the revival. I myself have been sending to people kind of sporadically, but I've just relaunched my emails as well. I'll also drop a link to those. And
in the show notes.
In the show notes. We got show notes. No, we don't have show notes. You know why? Because I'm not rewatching this for timestamps.
Yeah, true.
We're not we're not at that level of production yet, my friends. But anyway, so that's the context. So my question, I guess, is how's that been going? What's been coming up for you? How did, what was that process like to get into it?
So most of my first, I've got a nice little bird friend over here to join us. Most of my
first guest.
I hate it. I don't enjoy the process of writing at all. Well, no, that's not true. I think I'm enjoying today, even though I'm talking to you and hanging out in this beautiful outdoors with Tweety Bird over here, rather than writing. But it was more cathartic than what I expected it to be. I've never enjoyed the process, and as you alluded to earlier, I've been through various iterations over the years, and the idea of starting again really bummed me out. But I also the big thing. So what I wrote about in my first newsletter last week was that during COVID and even before that, I finally came to understand why my writing may be of value to someone. I've never been able to get over that idea. It always just seemed like, look, I'd prefer to just have a conversation with someone, or like, why would anyone care what I think? And it finally made sense to me in the past 12, 18 months or so, reading, listening to a lot of audiobooks and just diving deep into topics and diving deep into books, and just thinking, man, if this person had not taken the time to write this, there's no question that there were millions of books written about each of the topics that I looked into, or like there's lots of books that were written about catches in the rye, but like, if one person hadn't gone to the effort that they did to write this incredible novel, or if a researcher had not taken a year off their research to note those things down, then I wouldn't have been able to connect with the topic in the way that I have. And I just realized, well, for me, I now I feel a really strong sense of duty to pay that back, like to all the people that I've learned from. I really now want to, and that's where some of this, half-formed thoughts, idea has come from. Is like, you're much more comfortable and consistent with the process of creating content, whereas for me, I'm like, look, I'd prefer my work to do the talking, but now I feel like, well, actually, there's a lot of people who have done great work and then also taken the time to describe and document their process and, you know, just their thinking. And I've benefited greatly from that. So I feel like that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to do, even if it is a horrible struggle.
Yeah. I might share my experience as well, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I've had a list for a little while. It was like 20 people, 10, 20 people, you know, for ages. And then I did a workshop series called Productivity and Self-Care last year, and that sort of bumped the email list up. And so there's this constant feeling of, oh, there's the wind chimes. There's this constant feeling of, oh, I need, you know, they're expecting something from me. They're expecting something from me, but that's just not true. Like, I think it's more valuable to put something useful in their inbox than to like keep up consistency for its own sake is my perspective. And so that's sort of been like an internal struggle for me, because I know consistency is also valuable in and of itself in terms of like what fulfilling on what people expect of you, right? So this has been my internal struggle. But I've just decided I am going to show up weekly and do the work to make sure that it is useful. What you're saying about curation, well, no, you didn't actually say the word curation, but whether it's someone is turning their research into something readable, now we got a plane, or whether it's someone is pulling together a bunch of ideas and presenting them in a really neat format that is easily digestible, like that's a super valuable thing. I know I've been in multiple conversations where someone will say something to me. Have you ever heard of this term, imposter syndrome? I just heard it the other day. I'm like, you're middle-aged. Like, if that's new to you, like obviously it's not the actual experience itself isn't new to them, but the concept being new to them, I'm like, man, the stuff that I think is so done.
Yeah.
Someone said the same thing about analysis paralysis. Like, oh, the stuff that we think is so done is still brand new to someone in our community, potentially on our list, right? So being able to re-explain that in a different way, or even not necessarily really different, but just in our community with the clout that we have is valuable in and of itself. So
yeah, I think all of that's true. I think like a big challenge for me has always been conceptualizing or visualizing the reader, like who I'm writing for.
Yeah.
You know, I try and sort of like think, okay, I have a reasonably solid idea of who I'm writing for, and I often think I want to write for the smartest person or someone I really respect, who I imagine knows all of the similar things to what I do.
That's interesting.
And that trips me over, like because I end up being almost unable to come up with something that this person doesn't know. And I find myself constantly almost apologizing for repeating things. And it's just, it's just silly. So whereas with this one, I've used this iteration, I've used a technique or a bunch of techniques that I've learned from you, but primarily I just think every time no one gives a shit. Like no one's going to read this. No one cares. And therefore I'm not writing necessarily for the same person that I usually have. I'm writing because I think it's really important to crystallize my ideas. I haven't done enough of that over the years. I think I'm I naturally enjoy and I'm pretty good at crystallizing an idea through conversation, which is again why we enjoy having these conversations. But that's not really good enough these days. I think if you're gonna say something or put something on the internet, I'd prefer it to be a well considered thing. A fully formed thought.
A fully formed thought. Yeah, which is why we rehearse these here. I will add one thought, which is even the smartest people I know. No, I'll speak for myself. and I'm not necessarily the smartest person I know, but there's no measure for that, so jury's out. Even stuff that I already know, I find it really satisfying to read about it if it's been well articulated or if it's a different angle to what I've heard before. It's still satisfying for me, right? Like, you know, you've known me for a while. The stuff that I nerd out about, I'll keep reading about it even though I know it, because I'm now more concerned, I'm more interested in the nuance or the edges or the angles or the, you know, like stories or experiences. There's a lot more depth than just understanding the concept itself. So I will say that. The other thing I'll say is I've switched. It might be useful to switch who you write for if your original person is really intimidating. So just, you know, for yourself and for your audience. Like, but there's one person I write for. So I write two different things, but there's one person I write for who, when he heard what I call that body of work, he was like, oh, I definitely need that, right? And I know where he is. Like, he's informed, he's interested, he's on his journey, he hasn't finished his journey and is looking back. And so I know I have an idea of like how I'm helping that person and to what I'm helping them towards. But if you're like writing for someone who's already accomplished and done in topic you're writing about, they're probably not the best.
Yeah, and that's not a that's such an indication of my fragile ego, right? Like the idea that I would want to write for people who I really respect as if they would be paying attention to, you know, what like the only people I want on my list or wanted, you know, are the smartest people in the world who know all of this stuff. Anyway, the thing is, not only have I, you know, hopefully had made some inroads into, you know, chopping down that ridiculous ego thing, but the other thing that's made it a lot easier is realizing that, you know, the convergence of, you know, half a dozen disruptive technologies and, you know, everything being on the internet and all that stuff, like there is simply no way that anyone can know or be interested in everything these days. And it is so much more important that, like, as you said, that people with the ability or and inclination to curate things, to curate information, that they do that, because like that is just like the amount of noise. I did an experiment just before, like when I was working on this newsletter, because it's so amusing. I took an idea, like a broad idea, like artificial intelligence, and put it in, which I was sort of writing on the topic, and then I put it into Instagram, just like hashtag artificial intelligence, to see what, you know, like if there were like interesting posts or, you know, like how would someone visualize the idea of artificial intelligence? And I was wading through like pages and pages and pages of just the most inane bullshit, like nothing ideas, like people just hashtagging nothing, like news articles that weren't even really related, like all of this stuff. And I was like, I would have thought that you would only, because I would only want to, I don't even spend time on Instagram, but like I would only hashtag artificial intelligence if my thing was like really interesting and I wanted other people who were into that. But a lot of people are just putting garbage onto the internet. That's what most things are. So I don't know. I think for a long time I felt like if I'm going to put something on the internet, it has to be up here. When in actual fact, I think to beat or be more interesting or valuable than, you know, a lot of stuff out there, it probably only needs to be, you know, here.
I really think that there's something to that. While your list is small and while our, you know, following is pretty small, I think establish the practice while you're in this sort of safe place of, well, at
Yeah.
work, you're going to like ruin the lives of 4 people. And then later down the track, you know what I mean? Like, but
4? Man, that'd be amazing. Or like 1.5.
Yeah, them click rates, eh? But I think the practice comes first and then the quality comes. But if you're waiting for the quality before you establish the practice, that's impossible, because by definition you kind of have to do it to get good at it. Like, and good is unfortunately has to be in public, because getting good behind closed doors doesn't prepare you emotionally for like communicating with a broader, like with more than, you know, your mirror. Anyway.
Oh, good insight. I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a nice way for us to wrap up episode 2 or episode 10. I don't know what we're up to too.
I'm calling it 2. We'll find a good like casual segue to ending that we'll use on a regular basis. But for now, see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Rose.
Bye.